The stars had always been the galaxy's pride, points of light across endless dark, symbols of life's persistence. But one by one, they went silent. Worlds that had shone for millennia vanished without distress calls, without survivors, leaving only drifting husks where life once thrived. The Zithron swarm did not conquer. It consumed. Planets, moons, ships, matter itself stripped and folded into its endless tide. Entire systems blinked out like candles in the wind. No one understood how it worked. No one had the time to. The Council recorded its first contact in the Callus sector. 8 billion lives extinguished in under an hour. 23 fleets followed, each larger than the last, each ending in silence. The swarm left nothing behind but static and radiation. Panic spread faster than reason. For the first time in thousands of years, the elder races, the ones who claimed to have mastered entropy, felt fear. They called emergency session after emergency session, arguing through days that stretched into sleepless nights. What could fight something that devoured both energy and will? The Vora Empire offered plasma barriers. The Silan offered psychic counterwaves. The Carthrians proposed annihilation bombs large enough to crack planets. Nothing worked. The swarm adapted. Every countermeasure became its weapon. Every victory a prelude to collapse. The transmissions from the front became shorter and shorter. Screams, static, then nothing. The galaxy was running out of time, and everyone knew it. For all their technology, all their wisdom, the so-called advanced species of the stars had nothing left to try. Every world watched the void waiting for the inevitable flicker in the night that meant the swarm had arrived. The council chamber, usually brilliant and full of color, was dark now, its leaders cloaked in exhaustion and defeat. Even the air carried a strange silence, heavy and oppressive. The oldest among them, a being of light and crystal named Ovrin, spoke with a trembling voice that echoed across the hall. "If this continues," it said, "there will be no galaxy left." No one replied. Until a voice came from the back. Calm. Steady. Completely human. "Then maybe," the voice said, "it's time someone tried something different." Every gaze turned toward the source, an unassuming figure in a simple dark uniform, the insignia of Earth faintly glinting on the chest. The aliens had nearly forgotten about humanity. One of the newer members of the Council, a species from a death world that had clawed its way into the stars barely a few centuries earlier. Primitive by galactic measure. Loud. Reckless. Unrefined. They weren't invited to speak often. The human stepped forward, eyes unwavering. "You've thrown everything at it, machines, armies, gods and all but name. You tried fighting it with power." A pause. "Maybe what you need is something stubborn enough not to care how hopeless it looks," the council murmured. Stubbornness was not a military asset in their doctrine. Precision, logic, calculation, those were the cornerstones of civilization. But desperation has a way of opening ears that were once closed. "What do you propose?" one of the elders asked, voice layered in skepticism. "Earth will send help," the human replied simply. The chamber buzzed with disbelief. The representative of the Aethra collective leaned forward, her 6 eyes narrowing. Your planet hasn't fought a major war in centuries. You have no fleets capable of intersystem combat. What could you possibly send?" The human's expression didn't change. "What we always send when something needs to be done." No one noticed the faint tremor in the chamber lights, the quiet pulse of engines beyond the council's orbit. No one understood, not yet, that humanity had already made its decision long before this meeting. In the silence that followed, the council's holodisplays flickered, system after system blinking red. The swarm's advance had reached the border of the core worlds. Refugee ships flooded through space lanes like rivers of desperation. One of the alien generals spoke bitterly. "We have fleets of billions, weapons that tear space apart, and still we fail. What difference can a handful of humans make?" The human turned toward him. "You've been fighting it like a war," he said softly. "We'll fight it like survival." That sentence lingered in the air long after he was gone. Across the galaxy, the remaining defenders prepared for the next wave. Every strategy council, every command center, every outpost buzzed with the same hopeless rhythm, counting minutes, not victories. They spoke of humanity only in passing, as a curiosity, an afterthought. No one expected Earth to arrive with anything of consequence. The idea that a single planet could matter against a force that devoured civilizations was absurd. And yet, whispers spread. Somewhere near the Soul Gate, a small vessel departed, ancient, scarred, running on engines that groaned against the void. It carried no fleet, no escort. Just 10 life signs. 10 humans. The galaxies they passed stared in disbelief. Transmission logs captured fragments. They sent 10? Is this some kind of ritual? A message? Madness? Maybe it was madness. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Back on Earth, in the silence of a forgotten control room, an old commander watched the stars fade into data on a screen. "They'll never understand," he murmured. "They never do." Another voice replied from the dark, firm and quiet. "They don't need to. They just need to survive long enough to see it work." Outside, the sky over Earth glowed faintly as dawn crept across the oceans. Humanity had no illusions of saving the galaxy. They didn't care about glory or history. They had only one goal: stop the thing that devoured everything, no matter the cost. For the Council, this was a desperate gamble. For the Swarm, it was another meal waiting to be consumed. But for humanity, it was just another fight. They had lived through extinction-level events before: plagues, wars, collapsing worlds, and endless nights where the only constant was the refusal to die quietly. The galaxy might have forgotten what that meant. But soon, it would remember. Somewhere between the dying stars and the endless dark, 10 humans moved toward the greatest threat existence had ever known. Not with hope. Not with faith. Just with that strange, ineffable thing that only humans carried into battle: the belief that no matter how impossible it was, they would find a way. Because that's what they always did. And in the vast, indifferent silence of the cosmos, the stars waited to see what would happen when Earth finally answered the call. The Council's last transmission went out under a fractured banner of desperation. Their message was simple: every species capable of flight or thought must contribute forces to stop the Zithron advance. It wasn't a plea for unity anymore. It was a final gasp for survival. Across the stars, responses came in like falling dominoes. Massive fleets mobilized, planets emptied their defenses, and every civilization sent their best. The skies filled with silver armadas stretching from one horizon to another. The combined power of 1,000 worlds moved toward the darkness that devoured everything in its path. Yet behind the grand declarations, there was fear, cold, paralyzing, unspoken fear. Every commander knew the truth. None of it had worked before. Every weapon that had touched the Swarm was swallowed, repurposed, and turned against its makers. Every victory had been temporary. The galaxy was fighting with the instinct of an animal already in the jaws of something larger. Weeks passed, then months. Reports grew shorter, shakier, and ended in static. What had been an organized defense devolved into scattered resistance. Each world was on its own. Every fleet, no matter how mighty, ended the same way: silence. When the Council gathered again, its members were ghosts of themselves. Representatives from entire species sat behind empty seats. Others sent projections because their worlds had already fallen. There was no strategy left to discuss, only the ritual of pretending. That was when a quiet alert flickered at the edge of the chamber's holomap. A single incoming vessel, no identifier codes, approaching Council orbit. No escort. No authorization. It moved with the slow, steady rhythm of something that did not fear interception. When the scans resolved, the name burned across the display: E.S.V. Arcos, an Earth vessel. Outdated. Small. Ridiculous in comparison to the fleets that filled the Council docks. But it didn't turn away, didn't answer hails. It simply came. Security teams surrounded the docking bay expecting an envoy, perhaps a few ambassadors. What stepped out instead made the entire chamber fall into stunned silence. 10 humans. No fleet, No machines of war, just 10 figures in worn combat gear, faces unreadable, eyes sharp and calm in the cold light. The council erupted in confusion. The representative of the Solari Union scoffed openly. "This is a joke. The galaxy burns and you send a handful of soldiers?" The human in front, an older man with steel-gray eyes, didn't flinch. "You called for help," he said. "So we came." Another alien general, scaled, towering, bristling with weapon implants, laughed. "You misunderstand. We asked for armies, not volunteers. What can 10 of you do that trillions could not?" The human shrugged. "We'll find out." The tension in the chamber thickened. Even among the chaos, the arrogance of the elder races still clung like a disease. They couldn't comprehend that a world as young, as brutal, as unpredictable as Earth could matter now. The council's speaker tried diplomacy. "Human representative, you must understand the scale of what we face. The swarm's reach extends across half the known galaxy. We require strategies, fleets, technologies." "We don't have fleets," the human interrupted. "We have people." The pause that followed was heavier than any explosion. The council interpreted it as insanity. But a few among them, the ones who had seen the humans fight in past wars, felt something colder. They recognized the tone. It wasn't pride. It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. The humans submitted their deployment request, direct insertion into the active front. No command authority, no support fleets, no extraction protocols. When asked about coordination, the human reply was blunt. "We'll adapt." Within hours, the council's upper ranks were in uproar. One faction demanded they be sent back. Another argued to use them for morale propaganda. Only the oldest of them, Ovrin, remembered Earth's history enough to hesitate. "Let them try," he finally said. "When the void itself moves against you, perhaps it takes creatures born from chaos to fight it." And so permission was granted, though few believed they would even reach the battlefield. As their ship departed the council station, 1,000 ships watched it drift away like a spark against a storm. Broadcasts carried the story across the stars. 10 humans against the swarm. Every news feed called it madness. Every military analyst called it a distraction. The phrase, "Earth's final folly," became a trending tag across 6 star clusters. Yet among the dying colonies, the refugees, and the soldiers on the brink of despair, there was something else. Quiet curiosity. Hope wrapped in disbelief. Maybe, just maybe, these strange beings from a forgotten world could do something no one else could. Inside the Arcos, the 10 sat in silence as the stars stretched into lines. The interior was stripped down to essentials. No luxury, no comfort, only function. Each soldier was reviewing data on their helmets, old-world schematics of swarm behavior gathered from fragmented transmissions. There was no commander shouting orders, no grand speech about sacrifice or destiny. Just professionals preparing for the inevitable. "Do they really think we can win this?" one of them muttered. The older man, clearly the leader, though no rank insignia marked him, answered without looking up. "Doesn't matter what they think. We didn't come to win. We came to stop it." Silence followed. They understood the difference. Winning was a dream for those who thought in numbers. Stopping it was for those who understood survival. Back at the council, debates continued long after the Arcos vanished from sensor range. Some claimed it was symbolic, a last human gesture before annihilation. Others said Earth had gone mad. But on one of the outer fringe worlds, an alien communications officer monitoring deep space frequencies intercepted a transmission. It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't even coded. Just a voice, calm and human, speaking into the void. "To any who can hear this, we're not bringing hope. We're bringing an ending." The officer played it back 3 times. No one could tell if it was arrogance or prophecy. As the Arcos entered the war zone, every fleet nearby logged its arrival. A vessel that small should have been ignored, a flicker against the chaos of a galactic storm. But for some reason, the swarm shifted direction. Entire sections of the devouring mass moved, subtly, almost like a creature sensing something it didn't understand. For the first time in its existence, the swarm changed course for reasons no one could explain. The council didn't notice at first. They were too busy calculating losses and probabilities. But those who were watching closely saw it, the faint trace of hesitation in the infinite hunger of the enemy. No one could know then that the galaxy's greatest armies had already failed because they fought with logic, fear, and self-preservation. The humans were coming with something far stranger, far more dangerous. They weren't coming to survive. They were coming to end it. They called them the 10, though no one outside Earth knew their real names. Their records were sealed, their identities erased from every public database. The Council only received code names, each one sharp and simple like the men and women it represented: Echo, Brick, Ash, Vega, Shade, Iron, Hawk, Drift, Muse, and Grim. The aliens thought the anonymity was arrogance. In truth, it was survival. Names carried weight. On missions like this, weight got people killed. Every one of them came from a different corner of Earth's history, molded by experiences the galaxy could never understand. Echo had led a resistance during the orbital sieges, the kind that ended with the enemy city falling before her squad did. Brick had been a miner-turned soldier, someone who'd learned that endurance wasn't a trait, it was a weapon. Vega, once an astrophysicist, turned to military engineering when the skies she loved burned. Ash had fought in a war so old no one remembered the reason for it, only that he survived when no one else did. Shade had no record at all, just a trail of missions where entire enemy command networks vanished overnight. Iron was a medic, though the soldiers said she carried death more gently than anyone they'd ever met. Hawk, a pilot who'd crashed 4 times and walked away every time, carried a calm that unnerved even his own team. Drift was the youngest, a strategist whose plans always worked, even when they shouldn't. Muse was their signal specialist, the one who could read chaos like language. And Grim, no one knew his story. They said he'd died once and come back with something missing. They weren't a unit in the traditional sense. No command structure. No rank. Earth didn't choose them for coordination. It chose them because each one knew how to win alone. Together they were something else, something that even their own species found difficult to define. They didn't talk about courage, or loyalty, or sacrifice. They talked about outcomes. And every outcome they discussed ended with the same word: survive. To the aliens who observed them at the council station, the humans were unsettling. They didn't radiate the confidence of warriors or the arrogance of commanders. They were quiet. Still. Studying. Watching everything like predators waiting for a weakness. When questioned, their responses were short, almost dismissive. "What makes humans so sure they can do what others can't?" an alien delegate had asked. Ash's answer was cold. "We're not sure. We just don't stop." That single line circulated through every command channel in the days that followed. At first as mockery, then as curiosity, and finally as something like reverence. While the Council prepared endless data feeds on swarm formations and energy flux, the 10 studied none of it. They spent hours in silence, reviewing old combat footage, human wars fought on their own world long before faster-than-light travel existed. Wars where mud and blood replaced strategy, and victory was bought 1 inch at a time. They didn't look at alien tactics because they knew alien tactics had already failed. They studied desperation. Because that was something they understood better than anyone. The alien officers assigned to monitor them tried to understand. One of them approached Muse, asking why they didn't coordinate with the main fleets. She didn't even look up from her equipment. "Because we're not here to join a fleet," she said. "We're here to do what they can't." There was something unnerving about the way humans treated fear, not as an obstacle but as a companion. They didn't suppress it. They carried it, wore it, used it. Fear sharpened them. Pain taught them. Failure didn't humiliate them, it hardened them. On Earth, survival wasn't about perfection. It was about getting up again. The galaxy, for all its elegance and advancement, had forgotten that lesson. Brick spent his spare hours in the ship's hold, dismantling and reassembling ancient kinetic rifles. When an alien observer questioned why they didn't use plasma or particle weapons, he answered simply. Because these don't run out of power when the lights go out. Iron prepared medical packs that doubled as explosives. Drift ran simulations that never ended the same way twice. Grimm spent hours staring at a single holomap, silent, as if trying to memorize the shape of the enemy before ever seeing it. The council eventually sent an envoy, a tall crystalline being named Ari then, to evaluate the humans. His tone carried the condescension of a species that had never lost a war. He asked them how many troops they commanded, how many ships supported their cause. Vega answered without looking up from her tools. None. Just us. And what if you fail? Ar then asked. Grimm finally turned his gaze on him, voice like steel scraped against stone. Then it ends with us, not with everyone else. That response silenced the room. Even the alien sensors picked up a drop in ambient sound. The envoy left without another word. As the Arcos continued toward the front, the humans maintained a rhythm the galaxy found alien. They slept in 2-hour rotations. They ate in silence. They checked each other's gear not because they doubted, but because they trusted no machine more than human hands. When one bled, the others didn't offer sympathy. They offered tape and orders. Their language was blunt, stripped of comfort, but behind every word was the unspoken truth that no one would be left behind. To the galaxy, they were reckless. To themselves, they were focused. Humanity had learned long ago that the universe owed it nothing, that every breath was stolen from a place that wanted to kill them. Now they were simply taking that lesson beyond their home world. Among alien forces, rumors spread fast. Some said the humans were genetically modified deathworlders, bred for violence. Others claimed they carried ancient weapons lost to time. The truth was simpler: they were ordinary. Flesh, bone, and stubbornness. But ordinary didn't mean weak. On a planet where everything evolved to destroy you, surviving was the greatest weapon of all. Echo once said to her team, "We're not here to be heroes. We're here because no one else will do it." And no one argued. When transmissions from the Arcos reached the Council again, it wasn't tactical data or status reports. It was a single phrase recorded in human voice. Mission proceeding. Situation understood. No panic. No elaboration. Just clarity. That was what unnerved the galaxy most. Not their numbers, not their weapons, but their composure. Every other race had faced the swarm with terror. Humanity faced it like they'd already made peace with death. Behind them, Earth remained silent. No more messages. No follow-up transmissions. The Council sent inquiries but received no answers. Earth had vanished behind a communications blackout, its surface veiled from scanners. As if, having sent its 10, it had nothing more to say. The 10 never questioned why they were chosen. They didn't need to. On Earth, you didn't ask why the fire burned, you just learned how to walk through it. When the Arcos finally dropped out of FTL, the galaxy watched through long-range feeds. The 10 stood ready, motionless, watching the stars shift before them. They weren't saints, they weren't soldiers of destiny. They were human. And for the first time, that word meant something the rest of the galaxy could neither define nor dismiss. They were everything the galaxy had tried to forget it once needed. Not perfection. Not peace. Just the will to keep going when everything else failed. 10 lives. 10 hearts. 10 impossible weapons forged from pain, hope, and the oldest truth their world ever taught them. No one fights harder than those with nothing left to lose. The vanguard had crossed the point of no return. Behind them, Earth had fallen silent. No cheering crowds, no farewell broadcasts. Just the quiet hum of duty. The galaxy was watching, waiting for humanity to fail. But for the 10 aboard, failure wasn't an option. It wasn't even a word that existed in their vocabulary anymore. The stars ahead shimmered like 1,000 watching eyes, and at the center of that cosmic gaze awaited the swarm. The first to break the silence was Lieutenant Rios. "We're picking up gravitational fluctuations ahead, massive, consistent, rhythmic." His voice was calm, almost reverent. "It's them. The Hive fleets." Captain Mason didn't respond immediately. He stared at the tactical display, massive energy readings, enough to power entire planetary systems, all converging on a single point of darkness. A nest the size of a small moon, pulsing with alien life. The heart of the invasion. The heart of extinction itself. Confirm coordinates, Mason finally said. Full stealth approach. We're not ghosts, they are. Dr. Imani's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her console. She wasn't a soldier. She was the mind who designed the weapon they carried, the one weapon that might end this war. The pulse core. It wasn't just a bomb, it was a symphony of destruction, tuned to the quantum heartbeat of the hive itself. Theoretically, it could erase their entire species from existence. Theoretically. As they approached the edge of the system, the void began to stir. Swarm scouts, organic ships shaped like knives, broke from the dark. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Mason didn't blink. Helm, burn cold. Gunnery, hold fire until I say otherwise. The vanguard glided silently through the sea of death. The alien vessels drifted around them, blind to their passage. Every breath felt like betrayal of their lives. One misstep, one spark, one heartbeat too loud, and the galaxy's greatest hope would vanish without a trace. Sergeant Kane gripped the console beside him, his scars illuminated by red emergency light. Captain, he muttered, if they find us here, we won't even have time to scream. Mason's voice was ice. Then don't plan to. They continued forward, deeper into the swarm's shadow. Every scan, every sensor ping was a whisper through eternity. And then, something shifted. The hive knew. Without warning, the stars lit up with plasma fire. The swarm had found them. Shields up! Return fire! Mason barked. The calm broke into chaos. The Vanguard's hull screamed as energy bolts tore across it. Rios spun the ship hard to port, engines flaring. The gunners opened up with rail cannons, each shot a thunderclap against the void. The ship shuddered, but it fought back. Humans always did. Dr. Imani's voice cut through the noise. Captain? The core's destabilizing from the impact. If we lose containment, then we'll give them a reason to remember us. Mason growled. Outside, the swarm closed in like a living hurricane. They moved with terrifying grace, organic ships linking tendrils, forming networks of pulsating energy. Every blast they fired was instinct, every maneuver a collective thought. Humanity had never faced such unity. But humanity had something the swarm didn't: individual will. Defiance. The audacity to stand alone against the impossible. Lieutenant Rios gritted his teeth. They're trying to cut us off from the nest. We'll never make it through the central cluster. Mason's eyes narrowed. Then we don't go through. He pointed to a dense field of debris, a graveyard of destroyed worlds, fragments of ancient civilizations swallowed by the hive's hunger. We go under. The Vanguard dove into the wreckage. Massive fragments of stone and steel drifted silently, relics of 1,000 dead empires. The hull scraped against ancient bones of cities long gone. Sensors flickered. The ship groaned as alien gravity wells pulled at it. But they pushed on. Inside, the crew fought to stay steady. Dr. Imani's knuckles were white. Sergeant Kane barked damage reports like a machine. And through it all, Mason stood like a statue, staring into the dark, unshaken. He wasn't a captain anymore. He was a promise made flesh. A promise from humanity to the stars. * we don't run. We finish this. *. Hours passed. The pursuit faded. They emerged on the other side of the debris field, battered but alive. Before them loomed the hive core, a vast sphere of blackened flesh and metal, glowing from within like a dying sun. Thousands of smaller organisms fed into it, a living planet of nightmares. Dr. Imani whispered, That's it. The origin node. If we detonate here, the signal will ripple through every swarm mind. It'll end them all. Mason exhaled slowly. Then let's make sure it counts. The ship drifted closer. Every monitor flickered under the hive's psychic pressure. Whispers echoed through the corridors, alien thoughts clawing at human minds. Rios clutched his head. They're trying to get inside. They know what we're carrying. Mason pressed the command. Arm the core. A hum filled the air, a deep, resonant tone that vibrated through metal and bone alike. The pulse core awakened. The lights dimmed. The Vanguard was no longer just a ship. It had become a weapon of legend. Then, the hive struck back. Massive tendrils burst from the planet's surface, wrapping around the Vanguard's hull. Metal screamed as the ship was pulled toward the core. The crew was thrown to the floor. Systems failed one after another. Containment breach! Imani shouted. We're losing structural integrity. Kane slammed his fist into the console. We're not dying like this. He grabbed the manual override, firing the ship's entire payload of torpedoes at the tendrils. Explosions tore through the darkness. The Vanguard broke free, but the damage was done. Engines were crippled. Navigation offline. Mason looked at the flickering displays. They had one chance. One last act that could change the galaxy forever. He turned to his crew, his family. All hands, prepare for final run. We hit the heart, detonate the core, and make sure the hive never breathes again. No one hesitated. They all knew what it meant. 10 humans against the apocalypse. As the Vanguard accelerated toward the burning heart of the hive, Mason whispered into the comms, words meant not for them, but for the universe itself. You wanted to know what makes humans dangerous? He paused, a faint, defiant smile on his face. Watch closely. And with that, the Vanguard plunged into the abyss. The impact shook the universe. The Vanguard tore through the outer layers of the hive world like a spear through the flesh of a god. Hull plating vaporized, bulkheads ruptured, alarms screamed, but the ship kept going. Every system was failing, but every human on board knew there was no turning back. They had come this far not to survive, but to end it. Captain Mason gripped the command rail as flames rippled through the bridge. Rios, status! He shouted over the roar. Navigation's gone! We're flying blind! Rios yelled, smoke choking his voice. Engines down to 15%, gravity's pulling us straight into the core. Then let it pull, Mason growled. That's where we're going anyway. Dr. Imani's fingers danced across the control board, blood trickling down her forehead. Pulse core is active, but it's destabilizing under pressure. If we drop below 5,000 meters, the field will collapse. Then keep it stable, Mason said flatly. We're not wasting this shot. All around them, the hive came alive. The planet itself seemed to writhe. Thousands of organic conduits pulsed with light, channeling energy toward the intruder. The air inside the ship vibrated with alien frequencies, low and hungry. The hive wasn't just reacting, it was communicating, pleading in its own terrible way. Sergeant Kane slammed a fist into the bulkhead. They're trying to talk to us. Dr. Imani shuddered. No. They're trying to infect us. Their consciousness is pushing against ours. It's learning. The bridge lights flickered. Across the viewports, the surface below opened like an enormous wound, miles wide, glowing with bioluminescent tendrils. It wasn't a planet. It was a mind. And the Vanguard was inside it. A voice, not spoken, but felt, echoed through the ship. It was cold, ancient, and endless. You are not meant to be here. Mason stared into the swirling light beyond the glass. Neither were you, he said. But here we are. The psychic pressure intensified. Crew members screamed as alien thoughts crashed into their own, memories not their own, visions of countless species consumed, civilizations extinguished in seconds. Dr. Imani gritted her teeth. Captain, it's inside our neural net. It's reading us. Every fear, every memory, it's trying to make us stop. Mason clenched his jaw. Then let's give it something to read. He opened the main comms, routing every human emotion, rage, defiance, pain, love, straight back through the interface. The hive recoiled. The lights in the chamber dimmed as the psychic storm shifted. You feel that? Mason said, his voice rising. That's what you've been trying to wipe out for centuries. You wanted to know what makes us human? It's this. It's the part of us that never quits. The hive screamed, not sound, but pure vibration shaking the ship apart. Panels exploded, sparks flew, the deck heaved. Core charge at 97%, Dr. Imani shouted. Once it reaches full, it can't be stopped. But if it detonates too early... It won't, Mason said. We'll hold it steady. Through the chaos, Lieutenant Rios suddenly froze. Captain, he whispered. Something's moving inside the core chamber. Not the hive, something else. Cameras flickered to life, showing the central chamber of the ship. The pulse core pulsed violently, energy arcs lashing the walls. And there, standing in the glow, was Corporal Vance. His armor was cracked, face half-burned, eyes distant. Kane's voice broke. He didn't make it to evac. He's been down there this whole time. Vance looked up at the camera. His lips moved slowly, deliberately. Captain, I can stabilize it, manually. Imani's eyes widened. He's right. If someone maintains the modulation field from inside, it'll hold long enough to reach detonation range. Mason's gut turned to stone. He knew what that meant. Vance wouldn't be coming back. Denied, Mason said immediately. That's an order. But Vance only smiled, a cracked, tired smile that somehow carried the entire weight of humanity behind it. With respect, sir. I didn't ask permission. Before anyone could stop him, he tore off his calm bead and stepped into the light. The pulse core's energy wrapped around him like liquid fire. He screamed, not in pain, but in fury. The energy stabilized. Readings evened out. The core was holding. Imani's voice shook. It's working. He's doing it. Mason stared silently at the flickering feed. He'd led countless men into battle, but this was something else. This was sacrifice distilled into a single act. Keep us steady, he said, voice raw. Let's give him his shot. The ship plunged deeper. Temperatures spiked. Radiation flared. The hive's inner chamber came into view, an enormous, pulsating structure that could only be described as a brain the size of a continent. It was alive, watching them approach, tendrils reaching out like veins seeking to crush the intruders. Contact in 10 seconds! Rios shouted. Brace for impact. Kane's knuckles were white on the rail. For Earth. For humanity, Mason corrected softly. The hive unleashed a final psychic scream, the force of 1 billion minds crashing into one. But instead of fear, it met only defiance. Every human aboard projected the same emotion through the neural interface, pure, unbreakable will. Then the vanguard struck the hive's heart. The impact lit the void. The pulse core ignited. Energy readings spiked past measurable limits. Dr. Imani shouted, "Now! Detonate!" Mason hesitated for only a fraction of a breath. Then he pressed the trigger. Inside the chamber, Vance opened his eyes, light pouring from every pore. His final whisper echoed through the ship. "Tell them we finished it." And then silence. The core erupted. A blinding wave of energy tore outward, swallowing the hive from within. The living planet convulsed, its screams reverberating through the cosmos. Ships, tendrils, every living piece of the swarm disintegrated under the pulse's harmonic resonance. One by one, their neural links shattered. Outside, distant fleets across the galaxy, billions of hive vessels, froze mid-flight. Their psychic unity collapsed. The endless swarm, for the first time in its existence, went silent. And amid the destruction, as the vanguard was consumed, Mason stood tall on his burning bridge. He knew humanity had done it, not through numbers, not through technology, but through the raw, unstoppable force of sacrifice. The last thing he saw before the light took him was the faint shimmer of stars beyond the chaos. Stars that would live on free. He smiled faintly. 10 men, he whispered. That's all it ever takes. The detonation bloomed across the void like a sunrise. And the galaxy would never forget the day 10 humans walked into the heart of the greatest threat ever known, and ended it. When the light finally faded, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. For a moment there was only silence, a silence so deep it felt infinite. Then came the echoes, broken communications, confused signals, the static of dying fleets. Across 1,000 worlds, the hive mind had vanished. Their vessels drifted powerless through space, their biological systems severed from the pulse that once bound them. The war, centuries long thought unwinnable, was over. And humanity's name was written into its ending like fire carved into the stars. But in the aftermath of victory came the quiet questions no one wanted to voice. What had it cost? The vanguard was gone, no signal, no survivors, not even debris. For weeks, Earth's command centers scanned the void, chasing ghosts and fragments. They found none. The 10 men and women who had gone into the abyss had vanished completely, erased by their own triumph. Fleet Admiral Rain stood before the central display in the Terran Defense Command, watching as the swarm's collapse rippled across galactic sectors. "They did it," he whispered, voice trembling despite his rank. "God help me, they actually did it." Around him, officers cheered, cried, collapsed. But Rain didn't move. He'd trained Mason. He'd handpicked every soul aboard the Vanguard. And now, he could feel the weight of 10 empty seats on his conscience. Across the galaxy, reactions rippled like aftershocks. The Galactic Council, once fractured and arrogant, now sat in terrified silence. The humans, those newcomers from the backwater world they had barely acknowledged, had just annihilated the greatest existential threat in known history. Not with fleets. Not with numbers. With 10. Just 10. Ambassador Lyra of the Thauran Collective stood before the council chamber, her voice echoing through the crystalline hall. "You all saw it. Their weapon didn't just destroy the hive, it severed every link across their kind. The pulse spread faster than light. It was precision on a level we didn't think possible. And they did it knowing they wouldn't return." She paused, letting the weight of those words linger. "If they could do that, what else are they capable of?" The chamber erupted into debate. Some called it heroism. Others madness. The elders of the Vurex species whispered of ancient prophecies, warnings about a species that would rise from the edge of extinction and wield death like a blade of light. The humans had become myth, and the galaxy didn't know whether to worship or fear them. Back on Earth, news spread across continents. Every screen, every broadcast, every transmission carried the same haunting message: * mission accomplished. The hive is dead. * there were no names attached. Only the emblem of the Vanguard, a stylized silver wing crossed with a burning star. Cities fell silent in mourning and pride. Candles lit in every home. Children left letters addressed to the 10 who saved us. The loss was unbearable, yet the victory undeniable. Dr. Imani's last data packet reached Earth weeks later, a fragmented transmission recovered from deep space. The scientists pieced together her voice, broken by interference. "The core worked. It's spreading across the hive network. We're losing structural integrity. Tell them we're not afraid. Tell them humanity endures." The message cut out there. It was enough. And then came the discovery. Weeks after the pulse detonation, a signal was detected on the edge of the Perseus Veil, faint, irregular, but undeniably human. It wasn't the Vanguard, but it carried an encrypted identifier, Echo 10. It pulsed once every 73 seconds, repeating endlessly. Earth's analysts couldn't decode it, but the message was clear in its simplicity: someone, or something, from the Vanguard still existed. Fleet Command debated what to do. Some argued it was just interference, the dying echo of the core's energy wave. Others believed it was a survivor's beacon. Admiral Rain didn't care which. "If even one of them's alive," he said, "we owe it to them to bring them home." A rescue mission was authorized, the largest deep space retrieval effort in human history. But before the fleet could depart, strange reports began flooding in from other sectors. Hive remnants, dead for weeks, were reactivating. Not in violence, but in confusion. Without the central mind, the individual organisms were awakening as independent entities. Some fled. Some hid. Others began transmitting signals, primitive, scattered, almost like learning. For the first time, the Hive were thinking for themselves. The weapon hadn't just destroyed them. It had changed them. On the outer colonies, Marines encountered Hive fragments that no longer attacked. They communicated through gestures, sounds, even light patterns. Scientists observed them trying to mimic human words, behaviors, even tool use. "They're evolving," one researcher whispered. "They're becoming something else." Earth's government was divided. Some saw this as proof of a new threat, Hive 2.0, something more dangerous and unpredictable. Others, including those who still believed in Mason's last words, saw it as something profound, that even in annihilation, humanity had given birth to something new. Admiral Rain watched the transmissions in silence. One message caught his eye, an alien creature, formerly of the Hive, scratching symbols into the dirt of a dead world. The marks, when translated through human algorithms, formed a word. Simple. Crude. But unmistakable. "Thank you?" He stared at it for a long time. Humanity had set out to destroy a monster, and in doing so, perhaps given it a soul. Still, questions remained. What happened to the Vanguard? Was the faint Echo 10 signal a ghost, or something more? Some whispered that Mason and his crew hadn't died at all, that the pulse had elevated them, scattered their consciousness across the quantum field. That they had become part of the weapon itself, guardians of the barrier that kept the Hive from ever rising again. Theories, myths, faith, it didn't matter. Humanity now had its legends. Generations would remember them not as soldiers, but as the 10 who carried all of Earth's fury and all of its hope into the heart of oblivion. And out there, beyond the edge of known space, the faint signal continued. Admiral Rain stood before the transmission one last time. "If you're out there," he murmured quietly, "we heard you. The galaxy heard you. You did it." And then, faintly through the static, a second pulse appeared, brief, barely perceptible, but real. 2 beats, in perfect human rhythm. Heartbeat. Somewhere beyond the stars, something stirred. Not the Hive. Not a threat. Just the whisper of human defiance echoing through eternity. The universe would move on. Empires would rise and fall. But in the silence between stars, every species would remember the day 10 humans faced the greatest terror the galaxy had ever known, and didn't flinch. They would remember that when the void itself screamed, it was met not with fear, but with 10 steady voices saying, in unison, "We are humanity." And even death could not silence that. The legends spread faster than light. Across 1,000 worlds, the story of the 10 who saved the galaxy became the new measure of courage. They were whispered about in alien academies, sung in the temples of species that once feared humans, and recorded into data vaults older than some stars themselves. Yet, for humanity, it wasn't pride that filled the silence after the war, it was purpose. Because when the Hive fell, the galaxy didn't become peaceful. It became frightened. The power humanity had shown, its willingness to sacrifice 10 lives to erase an empire, had unsettled every major civilization. The Council's first act after the war wasn't celebration. It was containment. They called it the Human Accord. A treaty written not in friendship, but in quiet fear. No human vessel was to deploy weapons of quantum resonance. No ship could travel beyond the outer frontier without Council oversight. Humanity, they said, was too unpredictable, too dangerous, too willing to burn everything to win. It was a decision made not to protect the galaxy from humans, but to protect the galaxy from itself. Admiral Rain stood before the Council, his uniform immaculate, his expression a wall of stone. "We bled for you," he said, voice calm but edged with steel. 10 of ours gave everything, and you want to chain the rest? Counselor Varen, a crystalline being of light and reason, responded coldly. "We acknowledge humanity's contribution. But your kind acts without restraint. You unleashed a weapon that could have destroyed all sentient life had it misfired by 1 fraction. You are too volatile to trust unchecked." Rain didn't flinch. "Volatile? Maybe. But you'd all be dead without us." The chamber fell silent. No one denied it. The vote passed regardless. The Human Accord was ratified by every major species, except Earth. humanity refused to sign. From that moment, an invisible wall divided the stars. Human fleets were recalled. Colonies fortified. Trade convoys rerouted through non-human space. It was quiet isolation, the galaxy's polite version of exile. And yet humanity didn't retreat. They built. They rebuilt Earth's defense grid, expanded the orbital rings, and began constructing something the galaxy didn't know how to interpret, an entirely new fleet, not for conquest, but for autonomy. They called it Project Sentinel. Ships that could move through folded space without gates, vessels that needed no supply lines, no refueling stations. It was human engineering pushed beyond reason, born not from fear, but from necessity. Humanity had seen what unity meant in war, and now, it would forge unity in survival. Meanwhile, on distant outposts, strange things began happening. Wrecks of hive ships once lifeless now emitted faint pulses, signals similar to the mysterious Echo 10 pattern. Scientists analyzed them and found a repeating encryption embedded within the waveforms, human code. Embedded deep inside the energy signatures were fragments of human language, incomplete but recognizable. One phrase appeared over and over, "The light remains." At first, it was dismissed as static, a ghost of the pulse detonation. But then came the incident at Carhos Prime. A derelict hive ship, thought long dead, reactivated and transmitted directly to an Earth satellite. The translation was imperfect, but clear enough. Asterisk returned to the stars. We remember. Asterisk. The galaxy panicked. The Council demanded an emergency assembly, warning that the hive were awakening again. But Earth scientists disagreed. The signals weren't hostile. They weren't commands. They were calls, requests. The fragments of something, trying to reach them. Dr. Asha Malik, leading astrophysicist of the Sentinel program, gave her analysis to Fleet Command. These entities aren't the hive we fought. They're survivors, splinter minds. They're mimicking human communication patterns. They might even think they're us. The revelation divided humanity itself. Some saw it as a miracle. The pulse had not only destroyed evil, but reshaped it. Others saw only danger. If they remember us, one general said, then they remember how we kill. And in the midst of that chaos, the Echo 10 signal changed. Its pulse quickened, its coordinates shifted. It was moving toward human space. The Council demanded intervention. If that signal is what you think it is, Varen warned, you may have unleashed something even worse than the hive. Admiral Rain only replied, if it's them, then they're coming home. Project Sentinel accelerated. Massive carriers and cruisers came online, their hulls gleaming with new alloys, self-repairing, shielded against psychic resonance, built to survive anything short of a supernova. But the true heart of the project wasn't warships. It was a single vessel, the Legacy Dawn. Unlike the Vanguard, it wasn't designed for destruction. It was designed to find whatever was left of the 10 who vanished, and bring them back. Before the launch, Rain addressed his crew. His voice was quieter now, older. We've lived under the shadow of what they did. We've built, rebuilt, and endured because they showed us what we're capable of. But I don't believe they died. Not all of them. There's a reason the signal started again. And if there's even one chance they're out there, we're going to find them. The launch was met with silence across the galaxy. The Council protested, threatened sanctions, but none dared stop them. Because deep down, every species knew the truth. If the humans had decided to move, nothing could stop them. Not treaties. Not fear. Not even the memory of a galaxy they once saved. As the Legacy Dawn crossed the frontier, sensors recorded something impossible. The Echo 10 signal wasn't just a transmission, it was guiding them. The rhythm of the pulses matched human biometric patterns. 10 pulses per minute. Then 9. Then 8. It was counting down. Rain's voice cracked slightly as he watched the display. They're waiting. Weeks passed as the ship followed the trail, deeper into the void beyond charted space. Every few days, the signal would shift, always just ahead, like a voice leading them through the dark. Then one day it stopped. The crew expected silence. Instead, they heard a sound through the comm systems, a low, rhythmic hum. Not random. Deliberate. Familiar. The melody was faint, but every human aboard recognized it instantly. It was the anthem of Earth. The signal wasn't a beacon. It was a message. A song of home, played through the void by something that remembered what it meant to be human. The crew fell silent, tears cutting through years of stoicism. And Rain whispered the only words that felt right. "You made it, Mason. You really made it." The galaxy wouldn't understand. They'd call it superstition, fabrication, human arrogance trying to immortalize itself. But those who were there that day, who felt the pulse echo through the stars, knew the truth. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology, its fury, or even its bravery. It was memory. The will to remember, to endure, to return. And far beyond, where light itself grew thin, something old and brilliant stirred within the void, a faint shimmer, shaped like a ship, moving toward the light of home. The enemy had expected resistance. What they encountered was something else entirely. The 10 men of Earth didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like inevitability. The first contact engagement above Kepler 92 became legend before the battle even ended. The alien armada, a coalition of over 70 species, formed a ring around the planet, believing they could suffocate humanity's response. But the humans didn't come in fleets. They came in silence. One by one, ships in the ring began to vanish from sensors. No explosions. No debris. Just absence. Captain Varen of the Serkai Dreadnought Honor of the Sun stared at his tactical map as the markers vanished like dying stars. He demanded sensor sweeps, pulse scans, quantum field reads, nothing. Then, a sound played through the ship's comms, a faint human voice whispering through the static. "You shouldn't have come here." The next instant, the dreadnought split open from within, as though reality itself tore through its hull. The alien alliance was thrown into chaos. The humans, those 10 men, had vanished from radar days before. Intelligence claimed they were killed when the Terran destroyer Dauntless was obliterated. But now, each of them seemed to move as a ghost in the dark. Commander Ishan's unit infiltrated orbital defenses and rewired the enemy's targeting AI to read their own fleet as hostile. 3 minutes later, half the coalition turned its weapons on itself. Lieutenant Mara oversaw the kinetic bombardment, except there were no bombs. Instead, she redirected the planet's own magnetic poles, amplifying the gravitational field through ancient Terran field tech. The resulting gravity whip pulled ships into the atmosphere, crushing them before they could even ignite their engines. The coalition had studied Earth's weapons, its nuclear arsenals, its drones and railguns. But they hadn't studied its people, their ability to turn desperation into art, destruction into invention. Everywhere, chaos spread. The Galactic Council, monitoring from their high-orbit citadel, demanded retreat orders. But communication blackouts blanketed every channel. The humans had severed the galactic mesh. Commander Rourke, the man who had refused the rank of admiral, appeared on intercepted feeds, bloody, silent, helmet cracked, carrying a plasma rifle twice his size. Behind him, the bodies of 3 alien generals lay cooling on the deck. "This is what you call peace," he said to the camera. "We call it home." Then the feed cut. Across the war zone, alien soldiers began to panic. Entire divisions refused to deploy. Some commanders begged for evacuation. But there was nowhere left safe. The humans were already there. Sergeant Cole's team breached a command fortress using nothing more than hull fragments from destroyed ships, fashioned into high-velocity slugs they fired by hand. They didn't use standard military issue. They built their own weapons from the debris of the fallen, using pieces of their enemy as tools of defiance. When the coalition attempted to regroup around the gas moon Elian, they sent 20 cruisers equipped with shield harmonics designed to block human railgun fire. The first salvo from the humans didn't use metal rounds, it used asteroids, wrapped in graviton nets, slung at near light speed. One impact cracked Elian in half. The humans didn't fire again. They didn't need to. The psychological shock broke what was left of the alien command's unity. From the shadows, the humans broadcast a simple message across all frequencies. 10 of us came. 9 still stand. It wasn't bravado. It was a warning. Every ship that tried to flee found itself caught in electromagnetic storms. Its navigation turned against itself. Commander Ishan had hacked the Coalition's jump routes, sending retreating vessels into the orbits of dying stars. The galaxy began to understand, this wasn't war. It was extermination of arrogance. Among the Council's archives, an ancient warning once recorded by the Varnak philosophers resurfaced. *, beware the world that grows in silence. For when it rises, it will remember everything. *, the Council had forgotten that warning. Humanity hadn't. For centuries, they were mocked, isolated, forbidden to expand. They were the backwater species of the spiral arm, tolerated but never respected. And now, in a single campaign, they were rewriting every rule. At the center of the chaos, the Dauntless, once thought destroyed, reappeared. Its hull was scarred, half melted, but its engines burned with unstable brilliance. Captain Rourke's final transmission declared, "We are the storm you built." Then the Dauntless charged into the Coalition's flagship cluster, releasing a wave of dark matter EMPs that crippled every ship within 100,000 kilometers. The explosion didn't just light up the void, it rewrote the map of the sector. When the dust settled, the Coalition had no chain of command left. Out of 70 fleets, only 6 ships escaped the battlefield intact. Of those, none returned to their homeworlds. They drifted for weeks, silent, transmitting no coordinates, only the same recurring message picked up by outposts across the rim. "We faced 10 humans. We survived nothing." And in that silence that followed, a new legend was born. The galaxy's greatest armada had been dismantled not by fleets, but by 10 men who refused to kneel. They weren't heroes. They weren't soldiers of glory. They were the inevitable consequence of a species that learned, suffered, and evolved in a universe that once thought them small. The humans hadn't come to win. They came to end the idea that anyone else could tell them what they couldn't be. Their names were lost in the aftermath, erased or sealed in Earth's archives. But every corner of the galaxy whispered the same truth. The threat had been defeated, the galaxy spared, and 10 shadows from Earth had changed everything. Silence followed the destruction of the Coalition armada, a silence so deep it felt like the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Systems once ruled by alien empires now drifted without guidance, their command structures gone, their fleets shattered, their pride burned to ash. The war that had begun as a campaign of domination had ended in something worse, a reckoning. The humans had vanished again, their transmissions gone, their presence reduced to ghostly rumors whispered among the wreckage fields. Yet every race that had once mocked them now watched the dark between stars with unease, fearing the flicker of a human signal. On the galactic capital of Varaxis, the Council met in secret. What was left of it, anyway? 7 members, where once there had been hundreds. The chambers still smelled of burned ozone from the bombardments they'd endured when their fleets fell. Reports from surviving ships told stories so unbelievable they'd bordered on madness, a single human infiltrating a command station and convincing the AI to turn on its masters, another hijacking enemy gravity wells and using them to rip apart battleships. Even the most skeptical among them began to accept that humanity was no longer bound by the same laws of war. Or maybe not even by the same physics. Admiral Tor then of the Vrain species slammed a clawed hand against the table. "You call them men," he growled, voice trembling. "But what we faced were not men. They were inevitabilities. We brought 70 races worth of technology, and they brought nothing but wool, and the galaxy bent to them." The others stayed silent. The words had been echoing across every planet, every comm network. They bent the galaxy. No one dared contradict it. No one dared to provoke the thought of what would happen if Earth decided to move again. Far away, on the edge of a dying star system, the remnants of the Dauntless drifted in orbit. Within its blackened hull, 9 of the 10 humans remained. The 10th, Rourke, had vanished in the final explosion. His name was never spoken aloud again. They didn't mourn him in the way others might. They honored him by silence, by continuation, by the quiet acceptance that their work was not done. Because what they had destroyed was not just a fleet, it was the illusion that humanity could be contained. Their mission was never conquest. It was warning. For millennia, alien powers had kept Earth locked behind treaties and embargoes, stripping its colonies, suppressing its technologies, controlling its skies. They said humanity was too volatile, too emotional, too dangerous to be trusted. The irony was that they were right. Humanity's emotion was its greatest weapon. Their anger had burned across 1,000 worlds. Their compassion had rebuilt twice as many. No other species could hate and love with such equal ferocity. And in that balance, they found power no machine could match. From the ruins of the Coalition's command world came a new signal, encrypted, human in origin. It wasn't a declaration of victory. It was a single line, transmitted on every military band in the galaxy. "We will return what was taken." No one knew what that meant. Some believed it referred to territory, others to vengeance. But the truth was deeper, it referred to freedom. The 10 had seen what the galaxy truly was, a gilded cage, ruled by a council that kept order through fear and manipulation. They had decided that if peace meant chains, humanity would rather burn the universe down than live bound by it. Rumors began to spread that the humans had created something even more dangerous than the Dauntless. A weapon built from dark matter itself, powered by captured singularities. They called it the Judgment Engine. No one had ever seen it, but strange gravitational anomalies began appearing in systems that had once belonged to the Coalition. Entire fleets disappeared in transit. Moons shifted from orbit. The galaxy realized the truth. Humanity had gone quiet again, and that was the loudest threat of all. On the Council's internal network, a secret report circulated, classified to the highest level. It contained intercepted communications between surviving human operatives. "The war's over," one said. "No," replied another. "The war just changed shape." The Council understood then. Humanity hadn't stopped. They had adapted. Their silence wasn't retreat. It was evolution. Every pattern, every attack, every disappearance was part of a larger design no one could yet see. Across frontier worlds, strange outposts began to appear, automated, unmarked, unmistakably human. They provided food, water, and medicine to starving colonies. They repaired broken orbital stations. And in the night skies above those worlds, beacons pulsed in rhythmic patterns, repeating one phrase in Terran code: humanity endures. To the common races, these outposts were a miracle. To the former ruling powers, they were a message. The humans were rebuilding, not to conquer, but to prepare. What terrified the galaxy most wasn't humanity's strength, it was their unity. The same species that once fought each other for borders and ideology now moved as one mind, one purpose. 10 men had lit the fire, and billions now carried it forward. Every corner of known space began to feel the ripple. Alliances shifted. Old enemies reached out to Earth in fear, hoping for forgiveness. Earth replied to none of them. Their silence was their answer. The youngest counselor, a scholar of the ancient Varnak texts, finally spoke aloud what everyone feared. "We thought we faced an army. We were wrong. We faced a species remembering what it was." And that truth spread faster than light, whispered in trading ports, on military decks, and across ruined worlds. Humanity was awake now. Their eyes were on the stars. And for the first time, the galaxy began to wonder whether it had survived victory, or only delayed extinction. Deep in the void, far beyond map space, the 9 remaining soldiers stood before the remnants of the Dauntless. "Rourke started this," Ishan said. "We finish it." He looked at the flickering projection of Earth above the console. "They think we're monsters." Mara smiled faintly. "Then let's remind them, we're human." The engines roared to life, and the stars bent. Back in the core worlds, the Council received one final transmission before all communications with the Rim went dead. It was Rourke's voice, recorded ghostly distant. "You tried to cage us. You forgot who built the bars." And then, silence once more. But this time, the silence wasn't peace. It was the heartbeat of something vast and rising, something unstoppable. The galaxy had faced humanity's wrath once and survived by accident. The next time, there would be no survival. Because this was no longer about vengeance or defense. It was about destiny. Humanity was no longer asking for its place among the stars. It was taking it. The war was over, but the galaxy had not found peace. The stars themselves seemed dimmer, as though the light feared what it had witnessed. Across 1,000 systems, the ruins of fleets still drifted, silent monuments to a truth no one dared speak aloud. 10 humans had undone an empire that had stood for millennia. What was once the symbol of galactic dominance, the Council, was now a fractured relic of fear, its power stripped, its voice trembling. Every surviving civilization had only one question left echoing through their corridors: where are they now? No one knew. Earth itself remained shrouded behind a new defense grid that bent light and scrambled sensors. Explorers sent to investigate never returned. Signals vanished. Even automated probes disappeared before transmission. To some, Earth had become a myth again, an old world cloaked in ghosts. To others, it had become the new center of the galaxy's gravity, a silent power pulling everything toward it. Those who remembered the war said it wasn't victory that defined humanity. It was what they became afterward. In the deep void beyond map space, the surviving 9 gathered again, older, scarred, but unbroken. They had seen too much to ever return to what they were. They weren't soldiers anymore, they were sentinels. The galaxy had lost its balance, and they had made a pact to ensure it never again rose against Earth. Each took a sector, disappearing into the dark, unseen guardians of a species now feared and revered. They didn't act as rulers, but as reminders, silent watchers ensuring that no empire, no council, no species would ever again believe they could dictate humanity's fate. The legacy of the 10 spread through rumor and faith alike. Some said they were immortal, that the blast from the Dauntless fused their DNA with dark matter, granting them impossible longevity. Others whispered that they were long dead, but their minds lived on, uploaded into the very fabric of space. Whatever the truth, their influence became undeniable. Worlds that had once mocked Earth now aligned themselves willingly, pledging loyalty not to power, but to survival. In the ruins of the Council's capital, a new monument rose. It bore no names, no symbols, only 10 handprints burned into black stone. Beneath it was inscribed a single line in every known language, * they were not gods. They were human, * to most, it was a warning. To a few, it was a promise. Because while the galaxy tried to rebuild, humanity was building something else entirely, a new order, invisible, patient, unstoppable. They called it the Terran Accord, but no government announced it. No armies marched beneath its flag. It existed in whispers and coded transmissions, in unmarked ships moving supplies to distant colonies, in unknown benefactors funding reconstruction efforts. Human engineers began to seed the void with machines older than any alien empire's tech, machines that could bend the paths of stars, stabilize wormholes, and terraform worlds within weeks. Every colony that accepted Terran aid found itself transformed, thriving beyond imagination. And with every miracle, the galaxy became more dependent on Earth. Humanity didn't conquer with guns anymore. It conquered with progress. It conquered with hope, and that was something no fleet could ever destroy. But not all were content. Among the shattered remains of the coalition, survivors plotted revenge. They called themselves the Restoration, descendants of species that once ruled the stars. They believed humanity's rise would end all freedom, that the 10 had unleashed a darkness disguised as salvation. In secret, they rebuilt old technologies, forming weapons designed to counter human ingenuity. Yet each time they gathered strength, it vanished, factories sabotaged, ships lost in transit, leaders disappearing. Someone was always ahead of them. The legends said the ghosts of the 10 still moved unseen, striking from nowhere, ensuring history could never repeat itself. On a lonely outpost orbiting a dying star, a transmission was found centuries later, buried deep in the station's black box. It was dated to the aftermath of the war. The voice was unmistakably human. We didn't fight to destroy, it said. We fought to remind the galaxy that freedom isn't granted, it's defended. We are not your rulers. We are your reflection. What you fear in us, you buried in yourselves long ago. The message ended with coordinates that led nowhere, a set of numbers looping endlessly like an unfinished sentence. As ages passed, the story of the 10 became myth, told around fires and in the glow of plasma forges. Children grew up hearing of the humans who fought gods and won, who vanished into the dark to ensure the stars would remain free. Some said they became the constellations themselves, guiding ships through uncharted space. Others claimed they would return when the galaxy forgot what it had learned. But among Earth's hidden archives, one final entry waited, a report sealed under highest classification, labeled simply, The Covenant. It spoke of a project long in motion. Humanity was not done evolving. The 10 had been the first generation of something greater, the proof of concept for a future that could endure beyond death. Earth's scientists had deciphered what the 10 became: human consciousness, woven with quantum fabric, capable of existing between dimensions. The galaxy thought they had vanished. The truth was, they had ascended into the network of reality itself. Every star, every pulse of light now carried echoes of their will. They didn't just protect humanity, they became its infinite reach. And as the galaxy entered a new age of peace, something strange began to happen. New species emerged, hybrids born of Terran bloodlines mixed with the descendants of those who once feared them. They inherited not just strength, but spirit, the same spark that refused to bow. The 10 had ensured not only humanity's survival, but its evolution into something that no longer saw enemies, only challenges. The wars faded into legend. The Council became a chapter in history. And Earth? It became the mythic heart of the cosmos, the place where the impossible began. In the final record of the Terran Accord, a single statement was engraved, meant to outlast time itself. Once, 10 humans stood against the galaxy. They did not fight for glory. They fought so no one would ever have to again. And somewhere beyond the rim, in the endless night where the stars whisper, a faint signal still travels between systems, undecipherable to all but human ears. It says, simply, we are still here. The galaxy no longer looks toward Earth with arrogance or pity, but with reverence. Because it understands now, when the darkness comes again, and it always does, it won't be fleets or empires that save them. It will be the return of the impossible. The return of humanity.